Hi, good evening. Welcome on this fine, wet Tuesday in Singapore to this exciting webinar on how to manage your operations and save costs through digital solutions. We're very happy for you to join us today, and we have two special guests who will be sharing their wisdom with us in terms of their respective expertise within this topic. So this webinar, the aim of this is to take away some key things, and that will be what digital solutions are and how have they changed business operations. And today we'll be speaking to two speakers who work in a particular field of digital solutions. Also thinking about it from a business perspective, how is digital solutions helping companies to scale quickly, to do things more effectively and to save cost, which is a key concern for all businesses. So just to introduce myself, so my name's Daniel Spencer and I am the Head of Business Development and Partnerships at Sleek in Singapore. Sleek is a digital corporate secretary and accounting firm that has operations in Singapore and Hong Kong. We specialize in helping particularly entrepreneurs, startups and SMEs to set up an entity and then to manage the entity when it comes to the regulatory compliance, which means corporate secretary, accounting and tax, and also visas. And so over the last 3 years, we've assisted more than 3,000 companies to set up into Singapore and Hong Kong. And we are scaling the operations into different business streams and opportunities next year. So that's about me. What I want to do now is to hear from our speakers who we've got on our panel for today. So I might pass it over first to Mohandass. If you could introduce yourself, share a bit about your background, your company, and what do you do?
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. Can you guys hear me all right? First of all, thanks to everyone who kind of joined us on this rainy afternoon to listen about digitized payments. So as Daniel introduced, I'm the CEO and founder of Spenmo, which is a cloud payment software for businesses. So prior to Spenmo, I actually started my career as a management consultant with BCG, focusing a lot on financial services. Once I got bored of consulting, I ended up going to Grab, where I led corporate strategy and focused a lot on payments. And after my time at Grab, I actually launched Spenmo early last year. So it's been a really interesting journey for me as I've been helping a lot of companies, particularly SMBs, adopt more digital solutions as they kind of manage their payment stack.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. And what about you, Terence? Who are you and what do you do?
Hi, everyone. My name is Terence, and I'm the Business Development Manager based in Singapore at Transferwise. So I'm responsible for growing our business customer base in the APAC region. Before Transferwise, I spent 4 years at DBS Singapore as a corporate relationship manager. So I've had some experience with the payments environment in Singapore.
Perfect. So I can see more people are joining us. So as you join, if you have a question, if you have a comment, feel free to use the chat below to jump in on the conversation. So I might start off with Mohandass to kind of pick your brain in terms of this space of digital solutions. So what would you describe as a digital solution and how you think these types of solutions impact the business world that we are in? Maybe you could focus on your solution, which is a digital one, and how you are impacting businesses, helping them.
And Daniel, I think that's a great question. I think, we started Spenmo sometime last year, really because we found that the payment stack for businesses were not well developed, right? So, as you kind of look at the last 10 years, right, I think, with Sleek, in your partnership with Xero, that accounting has kind of moved from pen and paper accounting to cloud-based solutions. So now almost every single SMB, every single accountant knows that there's value that has been derived because your books are no longer on pen and paper. You can digitize them. There's a lot of insights that you can gain from having your P&L in the cloud versus trying to figure out what your P&L is on paper. And when we kind of, basically applied the same logic onto the payment stack, we found that payments were still very messy. We found that SMBs were still using dozens of IT systems and multiple separate software, email threads, and spreadsheets to pay out things and receive payments. So I think, we found that, we were kind of asking ourselves, if accounting can kind of move from pen and paper to the cloud, why can't your payment stack, which today is derived from multiple sources of pay now transfers, checks, payment gateways, multiple invoices they have to pay out, local transfers, overseas transfers, why are all these things in separate silos, right? Why can't we build all these things to the cloud? I think that's something that Spenmo and, I think in general, any software in the payments industry is trying to do. Another interesting trend has been that, in the last 5 years, I think we've seen a lot of unbundling of software as well. which is great, right? I think now there's a point solution for invoicing, a point solution for accounting, a point solution for like accepting payments. In theory, those things are great. But I think one of the things that we found is that even though there's multiple software which does separate things really well in the finance and payment stack, now there's a manual aggregator, which is almost a finance team that has to kind of be the oversight for all these multiple siloed things. And I think one of the things that Spenmo wants to do is just bring this view back into one dashboard, which will save them a lot of time.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I like your point that we used to, as companies, buy large software solutions that were very expensive, that were all encompassing, but now we're moving to more like an API driven plug and play system whereby there's experts in a particular field and they plug it into a broader solution. So I think what you guys are doing at Spenmo is very niche, but also very valuable for companies. In terms of yourself, Terence, you are kind of a front runner in terms of Transferwise in the payment space. You're taking the world on by storm, it seems. I see lots of media coverage of Transferwise is doing this in Europe, in Australia, all over the world. So you are disrupting, again, the payment industry in terms of what you guys are doing. So do you see this as a huge growth area for your company? And how is your business product helping companies within their digitization of their operations, would you say?
So I think when it comes to payments, so the story behind it was that both of our CEOs, our founders, were really frustrated with their experience doing FX at the bank. So they decided to start a ledger on Excel and to just exchange money between one another, right? But and so in that story, we realized that a lot of customers are experiencing the same issue that they're going through as well. So which is why, I mean, that's the reason why Transferwise was birthed. But I think just to touch a little bit more on digital solutions and how Transferwise can help. So I would say that digital solutions can be viewed as business tech stacks that can be turned on and off as required. So that means less upfront investment from the customer, which also means less technical debt and maintenance too, since it largely becomes outsourced and quicker time to market. So for example, the Transferwise API offers a range of capabilities for businesses to automate their payments processes or for platforms to build their own bespoke payment feature. So using our API is like building your own sandwich, per se. So there are a number of capabilities that you can pick from to build the product that makes sense for your business or your customers.
I like that sandwich analogy. It's almost dinner time here, so that's a good one. So I think that's another great point, is that companies these days, they don't have necessarily the funds to reinvent the wheel every time. And so it's good to be able to plug and play again into solutions which are being built specifically for a purpose within the strategy of a company or the needs. So I guess digital solutions is kind of a buzzword, but how do digital solutions differ from more traditional types of systems or solutions that are available out there? I think, Mohandass, you touched on it earlier, but is there anything you want to kind of build on from that point?
I think, a lot of times people kind of confuse us with being a neobank or like a sort of an alternative to a bank, right? And that's when I'm like, hey, no, Spenmo's, we don't have any desire to be a bank. I used to work at Grab before, where I was working on the DigiBank application and they just got approved. So I'm really happy for them. But again, we want to stay far away from that, right? We want to be less fintech, less bank, more software. And we kind of see ourselves kind of sitting in between whatever bank you use and whatever accounting software you use. That's the problem to solve, which is once the money hits your bank account, you have to pay all these different things that are your expenses, your company spends. How can we automate that process and just kind of take that away from your team, right? I think the way we kind of define a digital solution is when we kind of like, our main customer is the CFO and the finance team. So the main metric that we track the viability of a digital solution is how much time can I save away from the finance team so that they can focus on mission critical items that can't be automated. So we see a future where finance teams and CFOs spend 100% of the time thinking about how can I procure better as a company? How can I save costs? How can I become a proper business partner, finance business partner to my CEO and strategy team, right? And all these things, which is pushing money out, reconciliation, making payments across the board for the company, these things will be done entirely by software. I think that's the way we kind of see digital solutions kind of changing the next 5 years of how even SMBs and enterprises manage their payment stack.
So it's you're giving them essentially a powerful tool to then be able to have a voice in the management discussions. If they're the head of finance, they can come to a management meeting and say, okay, this is exactly where our finance is sitting. This is the future projections forecast.
Exactly.
And they can do that all potentially at the touch of a button rather than having to spend hours on spreadsheets to do that all themselves.
Exactly. I think the way we kind of think about it is I can save more time from where they, whatever Spenmo can do and any other software can do, that's more time for them to be, thinking about strategy, being mission critical to the CEO. And this is where we think. So, sometimes finance teams are a bit, when we first started, right, finance teams were actually a bit afraid of us because they had the misconception that we were trying to replace them. So we were like, hey, no, you guys are critical. It's just that I want to free up your time so you can focus on really, really important things that software can't do. Spenmo can't tell exactly your company how can you procure better, how can they make your function better, right? These are things that only you can do. So we're going to free up your time so you can focus on those things.
That's excellent. And I think that's a great definition of what a digital tool is. It's a tool. You still need a human behind it to use the tool. So that's great. So Terence, you mentioned before, and it's funny, my family, as we think about Christmas, we're all over the world and we're thinking about what do we buy each other in a pandemic? So we have a spreadsheet and we're essentially just sending money across different bank accounts in different currencies. So I joked last night that we should all just set up Transferwise accounts, link them together and just transfer money so we get the best exchange rate. But that's from a personal angle. But in terms of the business perspective, how do you see your clients who are using your product, how are they benefiting from Transferwise as a digital solution or a tool for their business?
So I think in terms of the difference between digital solutions and the more traditional solutions is three main points. Number one is access and scalability. So in the case of Transferwise, you can always access your accounts remotely from anywhere in the world. We do offer multiple admins and users that can be added or removed easily as well. And it's easy to scale when you're expanding to new markets. So basically not having to go through onboarding or setup again during your expansion. Second point here is cost, where there are human capital savings and flexible pricing models that are available with Transferwise. We always are very transparent with our fees. So every time you make a transfer, the fees will be presented to you upfront. The last one would be automation and that is time saving. So you go through, you experience a lot of time saving, a lot of reduction in manual effort and the reduction in human errors during payment creation as well.
And that's good. And so this is kind of how you're disrupting, again, a very traditional industry in banking, and you're making it a bit more accessible. And so, yeah, I think that's again, it's showing businesses how they can do things quickly. I think what I really like about Transferwise is you can access it in multiple countries and your onboarding is quite smooth. I have your green card and it's a very good experience personally, but I think from the business perspective as well, for a lot of our clients at Sleek, when they set up a company with us, the next thing they need is a bank account. So I think we are digital, you are digital, and I think the experience of the digitization, particularly for SMEs, is an important one. So I think you guys are nailing that in terms of your branding and your positioning.
Thank you.
So that's great. Okay, so I think, again, the focus for a lot of the people on the call and for kind of our key audience is small businesses. So Mohandass, do you want to share a bit more about your particular value of your product and your team and what you're offering for small businesses? And then within your ecosystem, maybe a bit more broadly, what other kind of digital solutions are you working with that small businesses might plug and play or consider with your solution if that can help them with their business?
That's a great question, Daniel. I think the way we started, right? We first started because we found that the accounts payable portion of payments was quite painful for SMBs. And, it can kind of vary, right? We first started on cards. We found that SMBs actually struggle to get multiple cards from like a DBS bank or any sort of bank, right? If they're 20 employees and they want to get on a corporate card program at DBS, if you're SMB, good luck. It's not going to happen overnight. And we found that as more SMBs became more digital, that means that a lot of your employees are buying subscription software, they're spending on marketing, they have to go and meet a client, they need to get a Grab ride, they need to travel. Not right now, but at some point before in the past, they had to go and travel, right? And all this was done on their personal card. They had to reimburse the claims later at some point of time. And we started on that, right? So we gave corporate cards, we make it easy, right? You onboard a Spenmo, you get cards within the day, right? Like this never happens with a bank. And I think it's something that we focus on the same way that Transferwise started, is that when you kind of compete against incumbents, speed is your only asset, right? So for us, the ability to create cards and create multiple virtual cards at the instant, right? Instant issuance of that was our big sort of like advantage versus the incumbents. So we focus on that. I think over time, we just realized that, card transactions in theory, like in the US, you have startups that have done really, really well in that space. Like guys like Brex, Ramp, they just focus on card acceptance, corporate cards for startups and SMBs. And what we found in Singapore and Southeast Asia as a whole is that card transactions itself is not the bulk of B2B transactions. That's a lot, like 80% of B2B transactions among our SMBs that we spoke to, they're like, hey, your cards are useful for my marketing, my subscriptions, but there's this big chunk of my AP, which is done on invoicing. The guy sends me a PDF invoice. I got to open it up in a PDF. I need to open up my bank account. I got to pay it out. That's the part that's actually taking my finance team a lot of time. So the next product line that we built within Spenmo, which is Invoiced Automation, which is that you can just kind of forward an invoice to us, drag and drop within the Spenmo dashboard, and we will actually use OCR, scrape the data from the invoice, pay it out, and then reconcile with your Xero account or whatever accounting software we use. And that actually became a much more popular product line for us because we found that, like I said, majority of transactions were really invoice driven. And we found that the tipping point for SMB to kind of use this was when they had more than 50 invoices to pay out. We found that on average, they took like 5 to 6 minutes per invoice to key in those details. These are not digital invoices, by the way. We found that there's a ton of SMBs who are getting invoices on emails and WhatsApp. So they basically have to download the WhatsApp, they have to open it, the bank account, they have to key in those details, they have to take a photo of the receipt and then push it to their accounting software. So super painful. We found that if you're spending time on like 50 plus invoices, you're spending hours a month processing invoices, which has no value, right, as a business. And we said, hey, we save up this time. You go back and focus on revenue generating activity. And that was a good sell for us.
Yeah, it's a good point. So I guess that thinking about the topic of today's webinar, what are the different types of benefits for companies? So time saving is crucial because again, you're doing things quickly. Like you mentioned, speed for your business was important, and being able to generate digital cards was a huge advantage over having to print a physical card. Often they come from the UK, so the time and get straight to market and get access as many people as possible and get your product in front of them. So that's a great example for you and your business, how you have leveraged digital tools to be able to have a competitive advantage over incumbents. Terence, for Transferwise, again, Transferwise was born digital. For you and your business, your colleagues, what is would you say is the strength for Transferwise as a digital tool, both for your own, but also for others, and particularly small business, if you think about the people that use your product? I think you're just on mute there, Terence.
Sorry, no mistake. So we've seen businesses use Transferwise in many different ways, out of which are managing treasury, to pay for invoices and suppliers abroad, paying for international employees, payroll, to receive payments from customers globally, and last but not least, to make online purchases or to spend abroad. I think the three key benefits here are, number one, save money. So we're typically about 5 to 8 times cheaper than banks because we don't use the traditional SWIFT network. So we've built our own network on local rails, which allow us to significantly save on cost and to offer low cost transfers to our customers. Number two, saving of time, because we're 100% online and making payments with Transferwise is super easy. So businesses can spend their time expanding their business, investing in their product, and less time on admin and payments. So 33% of our payments are actually instant and 80% of them are delivered within the same day. So that means that you don't need to chase your payments like what you usually do at the bank, especially when you don't know where your money is when the banks use the SWIFT network. So basically 100% visibility on the process. Last but not least is scale easily and expand into new regions. So Transferwise is available in 150 countries and we support up to 56 currencies. So that means that if you have new customers in different countries and would like to be paid in specific currencies that we support, you can always do that with just a click of a button, and there's no need to do additional setup.
56 currencies. That's amazing. Wow. That's great. So I think at this point, we've had a number of people join the webinar. So if you have a question, we're discussing digital tools, and we have two experts, particularly in the payment space. If you, for your company, are looking to use a digital tool, particularly like a Spenmo or a Transferwise, you have two experts on the call here. So feel free to drop in the chat a question that you might have. And if you don't have a question, we'd be very interested to know who you are and what brought you to this webinar. So again, while we're discussing, while we're having this panel, if you could write who you are, so your name, what company you're from, and what your interest is in this topic, just in the chat, so we can get to know you a bit better and also guide the conversation to be relevant for you and what you're looking for. But I might take a step back. We've talked a lot about your particular solutions that you both offer. I think more broadly, let's look at digital solutions as an idea for a small business. If you were at the very beginning of your journey into digitizing your business, it might be a very traditional firm and very traditional operations. What would you give as advice to someone who is at the beginning of that journey, particularly maybe someone from an older generation where this whole digital wave is quite daunting, quite scary? Where would you start, and what advice might you give? Knowing that you both work in this realm and that it's kind of your sales pitch to encourage people to digitize. We've talked about the benefits, but what would you give as just general advice? I might start with you, Mohandass.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great question, Daniel. I think one of the things that I would urge SMB owners, whether traditional or like non-traditional, more tech startups, is that almost from day one, at least at Spenmo, we found that we had to think internationally, like think beyond Singapore, because Singapore, I mean, it's a great country, but it's a tiny sliver in the world market when you think about it, right? And if you build a business that has the ability to kind of go beyond borders, you almost have to think from day one, how do you accept payments from other customers? How do you process those payments, right? And you almost want to set up your payment stack as early as you can with the ability to do that easily. Because, we had a lot of SMB owners during this time, during COVID, they were like, hey, I've never accepted digital payments before. I've never done anything digitally. But now, I want to think about expanding my business beyond Singapore. I run a HR tech company. I want to go into Malaysia. What's the process for that, right? So we found that, if you kind of have an international mindset from day one, when you can, right? If you run F&B business in Singapore, it's a different story, right? But if you run a software company, you run an e-commerce company, that's really nothing that prevents you from kind of going abroad from day one. Like there's software out there, there are tools out there, there are logistics companies out there that can help you kind of go international from day one. And then now it's up to you to kind of match and think how big your ambition you want to be to sort of conquer the market, but whether not globally from day one, but at least regionally, right? In Southeast Asia.
Yeah, excellent. It's great advice. Think international. Again, we saw that with the virus that shut down countries, people lost customers. It was interesting reading about a few companies that did co-working spaces and also co-living. A lot of their clients that typically came into Singapore were no longer able to come, so they had to pivot to local customers or to target new markets. So again, I think you're spot on. Being digital and having an international focus from the very onset can also help save you later down the track, and also with the scalability, because certain markets are only so big. So why not target the world? And the way you do that is through digital. What about you, Terence? What advice would you give just generally to someone thinking about digitizing their company?
So there are 2 points that I would like to bring across. Number one is to look for companies who are constantly challenging the norm and moving forward with offering digital options using new technology to their customers. Number two, explore as many companies or service providers as possible, understand what they have to offer and how their product works to make sure that their service would be a good product and price fit for your business.
Excellent advice. Very good advice. I'm just having a look at the chat. It's very quiet out there. We have a lot of people sitting here absorbing all this wisdom and knowledge, but it'd be great to know who you are. What's your interest? What company are you from? So that we can connect and also guide the conversation to be most relevant for you. So feel free to jump on. Don't be a stranger. We're all friends here. So again, I think it's interesting to see the space that you're in. And again, I liked your comment just then, Terence, about look for companies that are pioneers, that are looking for constant innovation within what they're doing. So I think it's interesting because we're always trying to see what's next. Digital's a bit interesting like that because anything could be next. The frontiers of what is digital and what's possible is becoming more blurred, and lots of things are now possible. So I'm interested to know, and maybe you're not in a position to share with us now, but for your own companies, is there something that you have in the pipeline? Is there something that you think for your particular industry would be quite valuable? that can help within this digitization of what you're offering and what companies are looking for. Mohandass, are you able to share with us something from your pipeline or what you see as the future?
Yeah, I think first, like the vision first is to just become this one dashboard that manages all payments for a company, money in, money out, all those approvals within a company. Interestingly, I wanted to kind of just point this out because this is one of the most interesting insights I've kind of gained from the last 1.5 years doing Spenmo, which is that, I've spoken to a lot of like US founders and US like finance teams, right? You almost find that there's such a high propensity to pay for a SaaS software that can save some time. So these guys in the US, I found, are willing to pay disproportionate amount to save 1 hour of their time. While in Asia, you almost reverse that mindset a little bit, where people in Southeast Asia are willing to spend so much time to save that $1. So when we pitch, I've tried pitching to some Indonesian companies because we were trying to expand into Indo. And most of the time they'll be like, hey, dude, I have 10 people who I can hire for really cheap that can do all those things for me, plus make coffee and print something for me, right? The software can't do that. So we're like, that makes sense. I think up to a certain point. And once a company scales to a certain point, with humans, there's going to be all these errors and human errors that kind of pop by. And at some point, software just becomes more dominant, right? There's no mistakes that happen in the software. So it's almost this mindset change that we find that SMBs have to adopt here, where they're so used to kind of throwing labor at a particular solution. Think about it. Don't try to throw people at a solution. Almost try to think of throwing a software to solve that problem, right? And I think that kind of brings us to the next point, which is the next thing in our pipeline, right, Daniel? That's what you're kind of asking us. Now we do all this invoice automation stuff, which is like you send us an invoice, you need to pay it out. One of the things that we found has been a big problem, even before that stage where an invoice needs to be paid out, is that it goes through all these multiple loopholes within SMB before it gets approved. So I've talked to SMBs that are not particularly big. They have like 50, 70 people. But for certain invoices that are about $5,000 or more, I've had people tell me there's 7 levels of approvals. So imagine this invoice from an employee goes through 7 levels of approval via email. Finance manager, assistant finance manager, CFO, COO, CEO, founder, then it gets paid out. And all this is in an email thread, right, where finance is looped in. And these poor guys have to kind of follow the conversation all the way. Once it gets the final approval, then they drag it and put it into the software, into the bank account and pay it out, which is what we're doing now. So one of the things in our pipeline is like making that approval process within the software as well. When an employee can drag and drop a particular invoice and automatically it pings the people who need to approve it, and we chase them to ping it, right? So I think that's something that we found is a big focus, because if we solve the approval part, it saves finance team a lot of time. And then once you kind of partner together, the payments, then it becomes an end-to-end solution for the processing of the invoice. So that's something that we're actually rolling out end of this month, so in 2 more weeks' time. So pretty excited about that.
So very exciting. I really like that. I think we all get done by death by email and CC. So I think tracking everything in one place and tagging the people, like you said, intuitively for who needs to be involved in the approval process will save a lot of time. So that's exciting. Looking forward to seeing that launch. So Terence, what about yourself? I know that Transferwise is, again, you guys release things all the time. So our clients are very happy and so are we. So is there anything exciting in the pipeline? I think for Singapore, you've kind of done a lot recently, but maybe more broadly, or anything you can share with us?
Thanks, Daniel. So I think, firstly, I would like to repeat the mission of Transferwise, which is money without borders. So our goal is to make moving money instant, convenient, transparent, and as low cost as possible. And we believe that sending money should be as easy and fast as sending an email. So with that being said, I don't think that there are other products that are in the pipeline right now, but our ultimate goal is to increase our coverage globally to our customers. So this translates to allowing our customers to send money to anywhere in the world. Because right now, I would say that our presence is not global yet. There is still quite a bit of work to be done there. And also to make transfers as cheap and as fast as possible. So regarding the price, Transferwise, we're always working to review our prices. So just to give you an example, in the last year we reviewed our prices 30 over times. With regards to speed, we are always aiming to integrate with the payment schemes in every country that we support, which will allow us to make instant payments. So just to give you an idea of payment schemes, it's basically the network that banks use to send money to one another. So for example, if I'm sending money from DBS to OCBC, for example, the banks would use always that payment scheme. So it's always immediate.
I like that. Well, you're on 56 currencies. There's 180 currencies in the world, so not many more to go, 124. So the world is your oyster. But I think your last point there, Terence, in terms of across different jurisdictions kind of ties in with Elena's question about security. Again, working with setting up companies, opening bank accounts, payments, there is a risk, a security risk when it comes to fraud, money laundering. So solutions like Transferwise that work across borders, how do you help prevent these types of things? I might stay with you, Terence, in terms of your KYC, your compliance, and the digital solution itself. I think that's a key part.
So with regards to compliance and all these financial crimes, we do have internal AML and fraud teams who are working around the clock to make sure that all our payments are safe for our customers and for Transferwise as well. On top of that, we work very closely with the regulators in every country that we support to make sure that we are within their risk appetite. And to make sure that they have the confidence in us, and in turn, that would help us to grow the trust and the confidence with our customers as well.
So I think it's not necessarily that you're designing your product the complicated way, it's more the system that's complicated and you're trying to simplify it through your solution within the limits of the law and what's legal. But in terms of you, Mohandass, in terms of your tool, again, you're designing it to be simple, but is there any way that it could be used or open up opportunity for fraud or anything malign?
I think first is slightly simpler than Transferwise. Number one, we're only in one country right now. We just launched in Singapore last year. We're focusing on the Singapore market because SMB in Singapore is very different from an SMB in Indonesia and Vietnam. Different problems, different payment methods locally. So we only onboard businesses, right? So I think with consumer, we find that consumer businesses tend to be a lot more fraud. Right, there's a higher chance of fraud when you're KYCing first. We basically onboard companies with an ARCA profile. They can only onboard it first, linked to their bank account, and we make sure that the source of funds is clean. So we do have an internal compliance and risk team as well that monitors every single transaction. Right, if they're trying to move money somewhere else to a particular bank account that we have no idea who's that associated with, we ask them for an invoice, for example, right? What are you paying? What kind of goods and supplies have this guy rendered to you that you need to pay this out? Right, so we do have our own levels of check, and certain things that does not meet our risk tolerance, we don't process. So we have a conversation with them to understand a bit more about the business procedure. Why are you sending money to this bank account in China? What was the services was rendered, for example, right? So I think we do have an onus. I think as much as fintech is about innovation, I think the rules are there with the right spirit in mind, which is about protecting people in the ecosystem, that money can't be laundered. You can't do illegal things with money. There's always a system in place, a system of checks and balances. But our job, I think Terence and my job, is to push innovation to that boundary where you can kind of keep it as safe as possible, but kind of reduce the speed, reduce the time, right? And increase the speed. So I think that's what we need to do. So we try to be as fast as possible within the confines of the law. And like I said, Terence, we talk to Amex quite frequently as well on B2B payments. And I think we present a use case, right? Whenever we find that there's a certain law that doesn't make sense, or there's a way to kind of keep the integrity of the law in place while doing certain things to make it a bit faster, we try to have the conversation with them. And most of the times, they've been quite amenable. As long as we can show that we have this risk tolerance in place, we have all these procedures in place. If this triggers, we basically kill the transaction.
Correct.
That's very true. And I guess again, you're both based in Singapore, as am I, and we see that Singapore, they have a mission to become a smart nation with a strong focus on digitization. So it's quite apt that you're both based here. People in Singapore, I find there are a huge market of traditional operators when it comes to the small businesses and SMEs, but there's also a lot that have an appetite for digital solutions. And the government itself, Enterprise Singapore, IMDA, MAS, as you've just mentioned, there's a lot of schemes, there's a lot of programs and grants and subsidies to support the digitization of companies, particularly small businesses. So I guess being based in Singapore and having your solutions, particularly you, Mohandass, launching here in Singapore, Do you see that there's a huge opportunity for what you're doing? Again, I remember meeting you before you launched Spenmo,
Yeah.
and you were interviewing, you were out doing exactly what you should have been doing, getting a feel for the market. Now
Exactly.
you've launched, you've got a product, you've got customers.
Yeah.
Do you see, like, again, you've built a digital tool that you're providing to businesses. Yeah, what do you see your roadmap? You started in Singapore. Is there plans to go overseas? What's next?
I think first, we did a bit of fundraising recently, so we're very thankful for that. I think 2020 has been a year of survival and then sort of thriving within this weird pandemic. We're all kind of gotten used to it, right? But now this sort of becomes sort of the status normal now. I think first, we want to focus on Singapore, at least for the another 6 months. I think in the next year, you'll probably see us launch one other market. We haven't picked it yet. It's either Indonesia or Vietnam. I think the reason why we're delaying the launch is just because Singapore has so many interesting problems. This local payment for us is very important to kind of integrate all local payment methods, right? Because that's when we get really sticky with business, when we kind of receive like via pay now, disperse via pay now, pay on cards, push money abroad. This thing becomes very interesting to a business when we can kind of do all these elements. And the danger is that if you kind of launch too quickly, you basically become everything for everybody, right? You don't really have a niche. So we found that we just want to focus on it. And I think first, we'll focus on accounts payable. Pushing money out as easily as possible. You will never think about doing your expenses or company spending again. All these invoices will be automatically paid. Everything will be consolidated in your Zero account. And your finance teams have that 100% of their time to really think about strategic projects.
That's a good point. So we have another question in the chat from Elena. So again, based on the security of the products. So is there an insurance policy if internal security checks policy fails? So I guess for both of your companies, security is a key aspect, being a tech product or digital solution. So I assume that you probably have strong data protection, privacy, PDPA, and also use of your product. So I'm sure there's terms and conditions or privacy policies and stuff out there. Do you want to touch on that question from Elena in terms of your own products? Terence, maybe this is not a field of expertise that you're in. So again, if it's not something that you are able to comment on, we can always defer. But feel free to jump in.
Sure, no worries. So I think with regards to insurance policy, to be upfront, Transferwise Singapore does not have an insurance policy, which is what the banks do currently. But with that being said, I think in terms of internal security and IT security, Transferwise being around for about 8 to 9 years, we've had zero case of getting hacked. In fact, we do experience such occurrences every few months, and sometimes they do try to hold us ransom, but we have never, we've never allowed any of that to happen. So I hope that answers your question.
Perfect. And what about you, Mohandass?
I think first, we're trying to be less fintech and more software. So I think the less we touch the money is actually better for us. But we do still have all these policies in place, right? I think the first level of check, when you kind of do compliance and you think about AML and CFT, is that obviously there's the software. You build all these transaction monitoring tools that sort of like pings whenever there's a transaction that looks a bit weird, that doesn't meet your usual risk controls. And then this gets escalated to our internal compliance officer. I get to view it as well. So you basically build multiple levels of checks within your system, right? So it's not just like a blanket rule of like passes or not passes, and then the system kind of takes it from there. There's always a person who's still involved, a compliance officer, a fraud officer. We always have conversations with MES and our lawyers as well when certain transactions look a bit odd. Because I think for compliance, it's better to be on the safer side than to err. And I think that's where we kind of said, hey, dude, like although Spenmo is meant to be speedy and simplify business payments, we're not going to do anything unethical, or if there's a modicum of hesitation on our side, we're not going to process it, right? So we kind of flag it out. And I think so far it's kind of served us quite well. Because for us, one mistake in this space, you basically get shut down. And for us, we have to be very, very careful.
Yeah, exactly. And we've seen one too many cases recently in the media of people being hacked, passwords being exposed, software being vulnerable. So I think that's the key concern for most businesses. Anyone that's digital has any information in the cloud. I think even just yesterday, like 5 o'clock in Singapore time, Google went down for a few hours, including YouTube. So again, no company is immune to these types of technical issues or hacks. So I think it's something for everyone to be concerned of. But again, kind of back to your point, Mohandass, you need to be fast, you need to be agile. And so I think security is important, but again, you guys are pushing the boundaries of the traditional industry, but within legal limits. So I think that's a key point. And I think for small businesses who don't have the resources or the time sometimes to take things in a very systematic order, jumping into somewhere where it's already been vetted, like a solution like Transferwise or Spenmo, gives them peace of mind or confidence, at least, that they can be using tools that have been looked at by MAS and regulated, and that other people are already using. But I guess it's always comforting for businesses to know that there is policies and insurance, if they're applicable, in place to protect them. So that's great. So I think we've covered a lot of topics. I just wanted to see if there was anyone else that had a question in the chat. Desmond, I saw your question around you're interested in online secretary, online accounting and finance services. So Dallas, who's one of my colleagues, he can follow up with you. He's on the chat with us now. I'm happy to share with you on that as well. But any other questions out there from anyone in terms of your own business? Have you ever considered using a product like Transferwise? It could be in addition to your current bank account that you have with OCBC or DBS, or it could be something that you look at to have sold as a corporate account for Transferwise. You don't have to have a traditional bank. You could have a digital bank or a digital platform that allows for transfer of money. At the same time, if you're a head of finance and you are, or your company doesn't have all the analytics or the tools that you need to make strong decisions financially when it comes to your forecasting, your inventory, your payments, have you considered something like Spenmo and what Mohandass and his team are building to equip your company in terms of your operations and the tools that you use within your business to save time? In terms of both companies, Sleek, we are partnered with both. And we're using both. So again, for us, from our side of things, it's helping us to work quicker, to save time. And we're also passing on the benefits to our clients as well. So I think after this, there's some marketing materials that we sent out to you. I think Spenmo or Mohandass, you have a special offer for all attendees of the webinar that they might be able to take advantage of. Do you want to share a little bit about that while we're here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Sleek's been a good partner for us, so we, obviously for the attendees who came and, like Sleek customers as well, we basically have a solution on the cards, we have a solution on the invoicing. So on the cards, one of the things that we're doing is the special 5% cashback, right, for any digital online marketing spend, right? So it's a heavy cashback offer for the first 6 months. So basically you can kind of like upload your marketing spends, your software subscriptions, and it's a way to sort of get a bit of savings during this time. We know money is quite tight as well. And also a bit of a discount on the invoicing side, right? So basically giving free invoice processing up to $100,000 of invoices, right? Just to automate the process as quickly as you can. And I think the whole aim for us to kind of work with new companies is to, end of the day, it has to save you time. So I think there's an element of saving money, there's an element of saving time. To be honest, when I pitch Spenmo, I don't like to talk so much about saving costs, even though it's a big solution for SMB. To me, actually, when you kind of think about it, your time is the most precious thing. That's the most expensive thing you're giving away, which sometimes I find SMB owners and finance teams, they tend to kind of disregard. They're like, hey, I can do that over the weekend. I can do that, a couple of hours every month. It's not going to kill me. But when you kind of think about it, every hour of your business, every hour of your time is very, very precious. There's a cost associated to it. I think sometimes in Asia, that's what I found is that people kind of disregard that. And to me, that's the mindset, right? That you have so much time in the week. You should be kind of 100% focused on the business, right? And it's something that, maybe I didn't do as much as when I was at BCG or Grab. And now at Spenmo, I find that every single minute that I have, it becomes very, very precious, right? There's so many things to do as a startup owner. There's so many things to do as an SME owner. You basically need to focus every single minute of your time on revenue generating activities. And I think that's ancillary, and that to me is business payments. That should be in the background. That should be done by software and automated as much as possible.
And I think it's a very good point in terms of saving time. Both Mohandass and myself are both new fathers. We've both got 2 little boys that are less than 6 months old. So I think any time we can save in terms of is great. So no, I very agree with that. But there is a question for you, Mohandass, in the chat from Sarah Davies. Thank you, Sarah. So what's the benefit of using Spenmo over traditional cards like Amex? Did you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I think Amex and most of the corporate credit cards we found, it's very founder friendly. So they do have a lot of rewards, like your miles and more of like they're very travel focused and miles focused. And we found that SMB owners and typically SMBs and slightly bigger organizations, the problem becomes is when you have to share the card among 20 different employees. We found that that mess that you get is not worthwhile to get a couple of miles. So we said, hey, why don't we build a solution that where you can basically cut your corporate card into 20 different sub cards, and all this kind of links back into one organization, the way that you do your expenses, the way you spend. And that's the problem that we found is that once the Amex corporate card or any corporate card, it kind of scales quite well up to 10 employees. And then after that, once you're spending, you're kind of giving the card being shared among more than 10 employees, it becomes super messy. We talked to a lot of founders at the end of the month, they're trying to reconcile, hey, I gave my card to my entire team. There's thousands of line transactions. Who paid it for approved stuff? Like what did they buy? Who approved it? You can't do all those things. Within Spenmo, we found that SMB owners really crave rules and the ability to control that. So we spend a lot of time building a card system where you get to set rules. So for example, I can issue a card to Daniel. I can set rules that Daniel can only spend on Sleek, on Amazon and Facebook, and I can control the expenditure because I get to set those smart rules on a card. With Amex, you can't. You can set a daily limit, which is fine if you run a small company, but anything more than 15 employees, you basically have to be the police, right? With Spenmo, we become the policeman for you. I think the second thing that we found is that, we basically allow card top-ups. If you have an Amex card, you have some sort of credit card, we actually allow you to use that card and swipe almost like a card up or IPMI model on our Spenmo app as well. So you can swipe your card, you can basically get money topped up and you can use that for whatever you want, payroll, rent, expenses. So that's one way to kind of use your Amex card in addition to a Spenmo platform. So you get the best of both worlds. You get to like swipe it and get your miles for a small fee. And then from there, you get to distribute all the limits into different card portals.
Perfect. So I hope that answers the question on Amex. And I was just thinking as well, miles at the moment, frequent flyer miles are not that useful, and how much longer we'll have to wait before we can take full advantage of them. Maybe a few staycations.
So I think for us, the special offer that we have is on cashback, right? It's money in your pocket. You can use it now. You don't have to wait before you travel the next time.
Excellent. Good. Well, we're coming close to the end. So again, think of any other questions you have that you want to put forward to Terence and Mohandass. And again, if what you've heard or if you want to find out a bit more about their respective solutions, we'll be sending out their contact details. But again, you can add them on LinkedIn or reach out to them. They're both very friendly. They'll share their time and their wisdom with you. But just maybe for yourself, Terence, a lot of the time we have clients who say to us, okay, I need a bank account. Which ones do you recommend? We propose both the traditionals and the digital, like yourselves, in terms of the accounts you're offering, the corporate accounts. But then clients are often asking us, okay, what's the difference between them? So again, you've kind of touched on that in terms of Transferwise has amazing currency exchange rates, so you save money on that. But what other kind of, maybe more on the digital aspect compared to the other ones, because the traditional ones, they have sometimes an app, they have sometimes other features which are kind of digital in a way, but you are fully digital. So what would you say to someone like our client who says to us, which bank should I go with, or which solution provider should I consider? So that's my first question, then I'll have a follow-up to that afterwards. So yeah.
Thanks, Daniel. That's a really good question. I think when it comes to a question like this, I at least need to state the position of Transferwise. We're not here to replace your bank. We're here as a function that would help you to send money overseas. So even when you create a transfer on Transferwise, you still need to fund it via a bank account that you own. So for example, if ABC Private Limited is making the transfer, the funds need to come from a bank account that belongs to ABC Private Limited. It's as simple as that. With regards to the multi-currency account, we do offer local bank details in 8 currencies that will allow our customers to collect money in those countries respectively. So those countries are, or those currencies are pounds, US dollars, euros, Aussie dollars, New Zealand dollars, Singapore dollars, Hungarian hoof, and Romanian leu. So think of it this way. You have these local accounts, pound account in the UK, US dollar account in the US, euro account in Europe. So if you have customers that are located in these respective countries and they need to pay you in their local currency, you can make full use of this multi-currency account that that Transferwise offers to our customers to receive payments, versus having your customers to send their local currency through the SWIFT network directly to your Singapore dollar or US dollar account based in Singapore. That will be a lot more expensive. Whereas if you use the multi-currency account in with Transferwise, it's absolutely free. So currently, this multi-currency account is available in 120 countries and will be live in Hong Kong sometime in 2021.
Our Hong Kong team is very excited for that. I can tell you that. I think we ask you on a monthly basis.
Yeah, exactly.
And once I think it was only recently you had your Singapore license to have the multi-currency account within the last maybe 6 months. But in terms of the account for businesses, it is possible to just have the multi-currency account as a corporate account, isn't it? As opposed to opening a traditional bank. So it is possible.
Yes, absolutely right.
And what would you say are other key benefits other than just the great currency exchange? So you've mentioned you have customers in the local currencies that you're operating in. They can save cost. Maybe it's a bit friendlier for them to pay in their local currency. But is there any other features of that account for a business to consider in terms of the perks?
Definitely. So I think using the multi-currency account, besides these 8 different currencies that you can collect money locally, you are able to open balances in different currencies that will allow you to manage your treasury there. So for example, if you know that you need US dollars in 1 month's time, and the rate is really good today, and you know that it's not going to get any better, you can do a conversion to US dollars and hold it to a future date.
Okay, so you can hedge the currencies.
Basically doing your treasury management with Transferwise.
That's nice. It's a good feature. And I guess the other benefit as well, I recall that you have a card, which not all providers do have that offer digital solutions. So as a business, you can have a debit card, which so, again,
so sorry, Brian, our debit card is only available currently in 6 countries.
Okay.
Singapore is one of them, but Hong Kong will be in the near future. We don't have a timeline yet, which is why I did not think to bring it up. But our debit card will allow our customers to spend money across the globe at POS systems and or on online shopping as well.
Excellent. Well, again, our Hong Kong team will very much look forward to that. But in Singapore, we're very happy. So thank you.
Definitely.
All right, so there was, maybe it was just to stay with you, Terence. So there was a question around KYC, which Mohandass has answered already in terms of Spenmo, but for, I guess that's a key question for a lot of companies, particularly startups, is that how much information, well, again, they know they have to provide some details, but what is the typical workflow of the KYC requirements for opening an account with Transferwise?
So onboarding can be done via transferwise.com or via our mobile app. So the things that we will ask you for is, so on a personal level, because in order to create a business account, you will first need a personal, if you need to create a business account, you need a personal account first, right? For the personal account, we'll ask for things like a national ID, so it can be an identification card or a passport. And in some countries, a proof of address statement, which is something like a utility bill, a credit card bill, or a bank statement. On the business account verification side, it's actually really simple things like what is the registered name of the company, registered number, registered address, who are the registered directors, and the ultimate beneficiary owners as well. So that's really all the basic things that we ask. So depending on the business activity of the company, we might ask for more information, because as we all know that different businesses have different risk levels when it comes to opening accounts with financial institutions such as the banks and Transferwise. So based on these risk levels, we might ask for more information there.
That's excellent. And I guess what we're trying to build in Singapore in terms of Sleek's mission is to provide like a one-stop shop for SMEs, entrepreneurs, investors who are looking to digitize their companies. We provide digital experience when it comes to just registering a company in less than a week, and then connecting our clients to partners like yourselves to give them more digital solutions. So part of this, in terms of our partnership, is we work as referral partners, because we know that we're all aligned in terms of our value proposition of being digital, of being transparent when it comes to onboarding. And giving a good experience, and also just trying to be in terms of the customer experience, be loyal to our customers by giving them a clear expectation of what they can expect and then delivering on that. So I guess in terms of this ecosystem in Singapore, at least, and within the region of Southeast Asia, it's always good to think about the types of companies that we're all in contact with, and maybe the audience as well, to think about where these types of solutions might be relevant for you or for anyone else in your network. So I think it'd be interesting to know, Mohandass, in terms of your solution and knowing that you're an entrepreneur yourself and you're looking to grow and expand and to scale, who for you would be the ideal prospect or the ideal person to be introduced to for your solution, if we as an audience can help you at all in your business?
I think first we found that particularly, our target segment has always been founders, CFOs, or head of finance. And I think the particular target set for us in SMBs, I mean, when we first started, we were just kind of saying we will build some SMB solution, right? And then what we found is that SMB is just too broad for like a startup to focus on because there's so many industries, different sizes, different kind of problems. So now we find that companies that are above 10 employees, SMBs that are slightly bigger than 10 employees, they have at least more than $1 million of annual turnover. That's when it starts to get interesting, where you have enough financial complexity in your financial operations that you would need a cloud software. We always pitch that, hey, from day one, you can adopt a Spenmo. There's no issue. There's always benefits, right? But we find that the tipping point comes when you get to a certain size. And that's when people are like, hey, I need to automate this, right? It's taking a lot of bandwidth away from me. So that's sort of like our segment. For newly incorporated companies, we find benefits. They get a corporate card from day one. They get to track all their spends and separate from their personal card. So it's quite a nice separation of finances for them. Sometimes it gets a bit messy, as when I started Spenmo, obviously there was no Spenmo around, right? So I was kind of putting everything on the personal card until we actually built the software, we built the cards interface. And then I found how troublesome it was to switch all my SaaS subscription, which is on my personal credit card. I had to basically claim for it back, put it through accounting, super messy. So, you basically get to start clean from an SME basis with Spenmo.
Excellent, that's great. And what about for you, Terence? Who are your team looking to speak with or engage with?
So I think the typical customer for us would be entrepreneurs, sole proprietors, small, medium businesses. And in the more recent times, we've started looking at more enterprise level customers as well, for whom we would integrate the Transferwise experience into their platform so that they can offer the Transferwise functionality to their customers.
Excellent. And so just looking at the last few questions, we've got 3 minutes left, so I might finish with these and then maybe circle back to both of you for a final tip that you can share with the audience. But what other solutions would you recommend for companies starting up? Or I guess, what kind of digital solutions are you using that's helping your company to scale and that you can recommend to the audience today? Maybe just pick one digital solution that you're using within your company. Mohandass, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think first, we have to sell to customers, right? We need to sell to B2B guys. And the first software that I purchased was actually HubSpot. HubSpot's an incredible CRM tool. I think with Sleek, you get a discount. If you incorporate Sleek, you get a HubSpot discount. I think it's amazing. It's a great way to kind of track leads, prospects, and all the way through the customer conversion cycle. So that's been super useful for Spenmo.
Excellent. And what about you, Terence?
So for Transferwise, I think there is one company that we use for verification of national IDs. I don't have the name on top at the top at my fingertips right now, but we do outsource some of the national ID verification to an external virtual partner to help us to do that.
Perfect. Yes. Again, as we circle back to the beginning of the conversation, there's people out there that are focusing on a particular niche. They're doing it very well. So instead of reinvent the wheel, you can now affordably access these digital solutions. So I think in the last minute, I might just finish on this last question, which was raised by Edmund. So in terms of this discussion, as I mentioned, there's a lot of traditional companies in Singapore, but there's also people looking to digitize. So what do you think is the biggest challenge that a company might face as they look to start their digitization journey? Mohandass.
I think just sort of inertia, right? This sort of belief that I've done this thing for the last 5-10 years. I'm just going to continue doing that way. I think inertia is probably the biggest enemy to sort of innovation and adopting digital solutions. And I think this is sort of the mindset that kind of prevents, sometimes we pitch to companies that we know we can help, but, they just sort of like don't want to change from the procedure, right? We can save them costs, we can save them time, but sometimes it's just a hard sell. And, sometimes the timing is not right. I think for startups and particularly for new software, sometimes market timing is really, really important. So for Spenmo, we're really, really thankful, right? Because this is the year that the government rolled out a lot of initiative around, IMD had this whole invoicing now, digital invoicing, digital payments. So I think for us, timing has been good. So we've been able to leverage that and sort of like pitch. So Spenmo, for example, is the IMDA Start Digital Partner, right? So for us, we're able to use that. We use that branding to access SMBs that are looking to get help. I think at some point in time, when an SMB who doesn't want to adopt a digital solution, you kind of look around and all your peers in the same industry are using digital solutions, you will feel a sense of FOMO and you will adopt, right? So we try to go for the easier, lower hanging fruit. And over time, it's just a matter of time. I think, you always see this like bell curve in terms of adoption, right? So I think now for digital payments, you're kind of getting to the part where you're just trying to get mass market. All the early adopters are really using solutions like Transferwise and Spenmo. And I think now we need to basically convince the mid portion, right? The guys who don't want to change yet that, hey, the time has come, right? You have to sort of move your payments digital.
Perfect. And what about you, Terence? What would you say is the challenge or?
So I think the biggest challenge that we face when it comes to kind of convincing our customers to adopt our solutions is the mindset. So let me give you an example. We have a customer called Direct to Florist, which is a family-run e-commerce company based in the UK, where they allow their customers to send flowers all around the world. I think because they do make about 2,000 payments a month, so they can't do that manually. And therefore, I mean, which is why we have the solution, our API solution, that will help them to automate their payments. And so since they've adopted it, they've really benefited from the significantly lowered FX costs with us, and their partner florists get paid faster as well.
Perfect. Well, I just want to say thank you to both for your time, for joining us and sharing your wisdom with us. And I think just on those two advice that you just shared, I think I will share some advice from my grandma to everyone listening out there in terms of digital solutions. And she always said to me, don't be a goner guy. And that means that if you say you're going to do something, it means just do it. Don't be left behind, like Mohandass said, like all the people that are not digitizing, because you will be left behind. It's important to be digital. It's important to scale and to think of ways that you can work more effectively, and the solutions are out there. Go out there, test them out, try them. You can always stop, but if you don't do it, then you're just a goner guy, or a goner girl. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us for this webinar. I hope it was insightful for you. Please reach out and connect with myself, with Terence, and with Mohandass on LinkedIn, and we'd be happy to share more on our different digital solutions. So wishing you all a great evening, and we'll talk soon.